I don't know what the accuracy of these reports are, but what's being reported is that he had 2 broken orbital bones and a broken nose. So both his eyes were broken and his nose was broken. And Justin was here a couple days later and he looked great. It's just nuts. It's just like, he's very deceptively good at rolling with shots. And, you know, he's fucking durable as hell and just very clever in how he sets things up and where he finds openings.
Ilia's never had to come back from adversity. Ilia's only ever been the hammer. He's never been the nail. Know what I mean? That's why after that fight with Justin that I had, I knew I could come back stronger and better because I've done it before. I don't think Ilia Topuria ever comes back the same. His whole mindset, his whole like ego, know what I mean? Like his is like, I'm undefeated, no one can beat me. Having celebrations the night before the fight. I just don't think he'll ever be the same. He's never had to come back from nothing like that. I've had to face adversity before, so I'd happily be.
Hospital. He's busted up. You know, I'm not a doctor, but his eye looked like he probably has broken orbital. I don't know that. That's not a fact, but I'm just assuming. And my plans for him are to go home and rest and recover and take his time. And you know, tonight was a rough night for him. I just want to make sure he's healthy and good, and not even thinking about him fighting again. Just want him to go home and relax.
You win the way you won in front of the f***ing White House. How's it feel?
You know, it's really not real yet. I was expecting to have like an internal sense of relief that like I don't have something to chase because I was always chasing this belt. I was expecting to wake up with like some kind of release of pressure, but I don't know. I don't feel that. As the days go by, every day I feel a little bit more. 2 days ago, my dad was like, what was it like waking up being the champion? And I was like, I haven't even thought about that. And then I was, you know, on the shit like 10 minutes later and I was sitting there thinking about it. I was like, wow, I'm the fucking champion. Like, it's fucking
surprise. Also, I know that Gaethje is a hell of a fighter. If I were him, what else does he want to accomplish? He did it all.
What do you think is next for Ilia?
Ilia is an unbelievable fighter. It's sometimes just not your night. He fights again, we will probably regain the title. He put too much energy, tried to finish Justin, and when he didn't get it,
I think that really screwed him up. He was expecting to go in there and do what he normally does.
Just a wild motherfucker, like across the board. But for him to pull that off the way he did at the White House was nuts. I mean, his some books had him at 6-1 underdog, and Ilia Topuria is so fucking good. He's so good, and he had him in sick trouble in that second round. But I watched it again yesterday. The second round was brutal. I mean, Ilia was just destroying his liver.
Yeah, almost put him down.
Yeah, but even in the second round, he still bloodied Ilia up. His face was busted up. Like, he was getting the most damage to Ilia's face, and that was a giant factor in the fight.
So shocked. I counted him out against Patty. I thought Patty was gonna, you know, come out there and get the job done. He proved me wrong. Thought Ilia was gonna get the job done. He proved me wrong. I felt embarrassed to even be sitting by him, counting him out. It was one of the most inspiring fights I've ever seen. His jab looked beautiful. His awkwardness helped him. Ilia did not know what to do. Ilia would still crack him, but Justin didn't even look like he got in a fight. It was so impressive. It was one of the sickest performances.
Guys, they're delusional. They have false confidence because they're hiding behind a weight class.
Were you surprised that Topuria ended up losing?
Topuria, in my eyes, was the best UFC fighter right now, but Topuria makes the mistake of he trains a little too hard. I knew if Gaethje could withstand the storm, he had unorthodox things that he was doing. Gaethje would dip and then grab that uppercut and hit him with the uppercut because, I mean, he's been in.
The diagnosis was devastating. Both eye sockets shattered, a nose snapped in half. Joe Rogan couldn't believe what he was seeing as the medical reports leaked. Ilia Topuria wasn't just beaten, he was physically dismantled in a way that most fighters never recover from. This wasn't just a loss on a scorecard, it was a career-altering catastrophe that left one of the world's most dangerous men fighting in total darkness against a monster. The aura of invincibility didn't just crack, it disintegrated in front of millions. The words Rogan used were chilling. He said the injuries were so severe it could be the end of the line. Joe Rogan sat in his studio, still reeling from the footage of the night Topuria fell. He described the injuries as nothing short of career-ending. We are talking about non-displaced fractures in both orbital bones. To put that in perspective, Topuria's entire facial structure was compromised while Justin Gaethje was still headhunting. Rogan pointed out that Topuria had never faced this kind of adversity before. He went from being the hunter, the man who believed he was untouchable, to a victim of systematic facial destruction. The damage was so severe that experts are wondering if he will ever be the same fighter again. The most terrifying revelation came from Topuria himself after the dust settled. He admitted to losing vision in his right eye during the very first round. Imagine standing across from a heavy hitter like Gaethje and seeing nothing but a blur on one side. By the second round, his left eye started failing too. He was essentially fighting blind for the final 10 minutes of the match. This changes the entire narrative of the fight. It wasn't just a lack of cardio or a bad game plan. It was a man struggling to survive a world-class athlete while his body literally shut down on him. It was a nightmare scenario. While Topuria was breaking, Justin Gaethje looked like he was barely in a fight. Rogan noted how deceptive Gaethje's defense has become. He's incredibly good at rolling with shots and finding openings where none exist. Just days after the carnage, Gaethje appeared in public looking absolutely fresh. No swelling, no cuts, just a man who had completed a professional job. The contrast was haunting. One man walked away with a belt and a clean bill of health, while the other was rushed to a hospital with injuries that could sideline him for years. It made the outcome feel even more definitive and brutal. Before this fight, Ilia Topuria was the king of confidence. He was having celebrations the night before the bout, acting as if the victory was already a foregone conclusion. Rogan highlighted how dangerous that mindset is when you've never tasted defeat. Topuria has only ever been in the hammock, never on the nail. He's used to being the one dishing out the punishment. When the roles reversed, his entire ego was put on trial. Rogan believes this psychological blow might be even harder to heal than the broken bones in his face. Once that mental armor is pierced, the whole game changes forever. There was a moment in the second round where it looked like Topuria might pull it off. He landed a brutal body attack that nearly folded Gaethje. Rogan watched it back and saw Topuria destroying Gaethje's liver. For a few seconds, the world thought the undefeated phenom was going to find a way. But Gaethje is a different breed of human. He weathered the storm and kept pressing. Even while being hit, Gaethje was bloodying Topuria up, landing the shots that would eventually lead to those devastating orbital fractures. It was a high-stakes game of chicken that Topuria ultimately lost. Analysts are now looking at a specific decision Topuria made in that second round as a fatal mistake. Instead of staying on his feet and finishing the job while Gaethje was hurt, he chose to chase a submission on the ground. It gave Gaethje the time he needed to breathe and reset. By the time they stood back up, the momentum had shifted permanently. Gaethje realized he could withstand Topuria's best shots, and Topuria realized his vision was fading fast. It was the beginning of the end for the reigning champion, and he didn't even know how much danger his career was actually in. Daniel Cormier brought up a crucial detail from the broadcast. After the third round, the Octagon doctor took a very long look at Topuria. His face was a mask of trauma. Cormier argued that the doctor almost waved it off right then and there. There was an internal struggle between letting a champion go out on his shield and protecting a human being from permanent damage. They let it go to a fourth round, but in hindsight, that decision only amplified the punishment Topuria had to endure while he was already broken. It was a display of heart, but it may have cost him his athletic future. When the fight finally ended with a corner stop before the fifth round, the world was in shock, but the people ringside were relieved. Joe Rogan said it was the right call. Topuria was sagging onto his stool, looking like a man whose spirit had been separated from his body. It wasn't just the bell ringing, it was the sound of a reign coming to a violent, abrupt end. The corner saw what the fans couldn't see yet. They saw a fighter who was physically incapable of defending himself against a relentless hunter like Gaethje. They chose to save him from himself, but the damage was done. The hospital results were even worse than suspected. The association handed down a massive 180-day medical suspension. That is the maximum allowed. On top of that, he was given a mandatory 60-day no-contact period. His team is now whispering about a return date in early 2027. This isn't a quick turnaround. This is a total reconstruction of a career. You don't just bounce back from double orbital fractures. You have to wait for the bones to fuse and hope the nerves in your face still function correctly. Every day he sits out, the shadow of this loss grows larger and more daunting. Before Topuria can even think about stepping into a gym, he has to pass an oral and maxillofacial evaluation. This is high-level medical clearance usually reserved for car accident victims. The fractures were non-displaced, which means he avoided surgery, but the trauma to the tissue and the eyes is significant. Rogan mentioned that when your eyes are compromised, your entire equilibrium changes. The fear is that Topuria might develop a psychological barrier the next time a glove comes flying toward those same fragile spots. It's a hurdle that many great fighters have failed to clear. This performance solidified Justin Gaethje as one of the most terrifying tactical fighters in the sport. He didn't just brawl, he used controlled violence. He identified the damage early and kept hitting the exact same spots. Rogan pointed out that Gaethje's uppercut in the clinch was the silent killer. It didn't look like much on the first watch, but those are the shots that shatter bones and mess with a fighter's breathing. Gaethje systematically dismantled the best fighter in the world by exploiting a physical weakness he created. He proved that sometimes precision beats power every time. Let's not forget that Gaethje was a massive 6-1 underdog in some sports books. The betting markets had already written him off. Analysts thought Topuria would walk through him and move on to legend status. Even Joe Rogan admitted he felt embarrassed for counting Gaethje out. It was one of the most inspiring performances in UFC history because it proved that skill and heart can overcome any hype train. The White House setting only added to the mythology of a night where everything we thought we knew was proven wrong. It was a night of brutal, undeniable reality for everyone. To his credit, Topuria didn't hide after the loss. He took to social media with a statement that was surprisingly humble. He admitted that Gaethje did exactly what he promised to do, leave a mark on his face. He didn't make excuses about the vision loss, even though it clearly cost him the fight. He acknowledged the champion's skill and immediately called for a rematch, but the MMA world is skeptical. A rematch sounds great in theory, but the physical toll of that first encounter might make the second one even more one-sided. He has a lot of proving to do before he gets that chance. Rogan's biggest concern isn't the physical injury, but the mental one. Topuria built his entire brand on being an undefeated, untouchable matador. Now, he's a man who has been finished. He has to live with the memory of sitting on that stool, unable to see while his corner told him it was over. That kind of trauma stays with a fighter. It changes how they train and how they react in the pocket. Rogan noted that some fighters come back stronger, while others never find that same spark again once the aura of invincibility is gone. The mental recovery might take years. The lightweight division isn't going to wait for Topuria to heal. While he sits on the sidelines for the next year or more, the rankings are shifting. Arman Tsarukyan is looming at the top, and there are rumors of massive commercial fights involving returning legends. Gaethje has already hinted that he isn't interested in an immediate rematch. From his perspective, he beat Topuria twice in one night, once by breaking his face and once by forcing the corner to quit. Gaethje has options, and Topuria only has a long road of recovery. The game moves on with or without the former king. Rogan also touched on a theory about Topuria's preparation. Some insiders believe he actually trains a little too hard. In the lead up to big fights, he might be leaving his best performances in the gym. If he was already entering the octagon with lingering issues, the damage Gaethje inflicted would have been amplified tenfold. Rogan mentioned that Gaethje's style, dipping and grabbing that lead uppercut, is a nightmare for someone who overtrains and relies on rigid technique. This loss might force him to completely rethink how he prepares his body for the sheer violence of the cage. When you re-watch the fight, you can see the exact moment Topuria's face changes. His jab looked beautiful early on, but as Gaethje's pressure mounted, those facial fractures began to take a toll. Rogan emphasized that the damage was the defining factor. It wasn't about who was the better wrestler or who had the better cardio. It was about whose body could withstand the most trauma. By the end of the fourth round, Topuria's face told a story of utter devastation that no amount of heart could overcome. It was a visual representation of a career hitting a brick wall at full speed. Rogan has been cage-side for 20 years. He's seen the most violent moments in the history of the sport, but even he seemed rattled by this one. He called it one of the sickest performances he's ever witnessed. The setting, the stakes of the championship, and the sheer brutality of the injuries created a perfect storm. Rogan's analysis wasn't just about the fight, it was a warning. He knows that these kinds of wars take years off a fighter's life. He's seen legends get broken and never return to form, and he fears that Topuria might be the latest addition to that tragic list. If the 2027 return timeline holds true, Topuria will be returning to a completely different landscape. He will be older, coming off a massive layoff, and carrying the weight of a horrific injury. The question is whether he can maintain his star power while being inactive. In this sport, out of sight often means out of mind. He will have to work twice as hard to convince the fans and the promotion that he is still the same man who terrified the division before that fateful night. The climb back to the top is always much steeper than the first ascent, especially with shattered bones. For Justin Gaethje, this win is the crowning achievement of a legendary career. He proved he's more than just a highlight fighter. He's a champion who can dismantle the elite. Rogan wondered what else Gaethje even has to accomplish. He's done it all. He's been in the wars, he's won the gold, and he's beaten the man everyone thought was unbeatable. He leaves the arena with his health intact and his legacy secured, while his opponent is left to pick up the pieces of a shattered dream. It is the ultimate dichotomy of the fight game, where one man's glory is another man's ruin. The phrase Rogan kept coming back to was busted up. It's a simple term, but it carries so much weight in combat sports. To be busted up means your physical tools have been taken away from you. You can have all the skill in the world, but if your orbital bones are in pieces and you can't see the punches coming, you are a sitting duck. Topuria learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. He found out that even the most talented fighters are still just human beings made of bone and blood. That realization can be a career ender all on its own, regardless of the physical healing. Ultimately, this fight served as a grim reminder of the price of greatness. Ilia Topuria reached for the sun and got his wings burned in the most public way imaginable. Whether he can rebuild his face and his confidence is the biggest question mark in the sport today. He swears he will come back stronger, but Joe Rogan and the rest of the world are watching closely to see if the damage was too deep to fix. One thing is certain, the version of Topuria we knew before this fight is gone forever, and what emerges next will define his entire legacy and determine if he ever wears gold again.